Hilchos Ishus Perek Esrim, the laws of marriage, chapter 20. Almost 3 weeks straight we're learning about the laws of marriage. And the last couple of days, the Rambam has spent delineating all the obligations that a husband has to his wife that are inherently stipulated in the Kesubah. Some of them apply during the marriage, and a bunch of them apply post-marriage, if the marriage ends either through divorce or through the husband dying. Today, we have one more chapter that deals with an obligation that the husband has before tomorrow we move on to the obligations of the wife. And what makes this one unique is that it's not rabbinical. It's not in the ketubah. It's not one of those conditions that comes along as a package deal with the marriage. It's an additional commandment that the sages enacted that people should do with their estate. And that is the following. It's called parnasa. Parnasa, I know today means making a living, but it's actually in halacha a specific reference to a dowry. A dowry, what today people might call nedunya. Even though in halacha, nedunya means property that a woman brings into a marriage, but today you might hear, I married off my daughter, I gave her a nedunya. You give her something to kind of help her in, some money into the marriage. Says the Rambam halacha aleph tzivu chachamim. The sages have commanded shayitin adam min nechasav ma'at libitay, that a person should give a little bit of his estate to his daughter, kedei shetinaseh bay, so she should be able to get married with it. V'zeu hanikra parnasa. That's called some parnasa. In English, again, a dowry. Hamasi as bitoy stam. When somebody marries off his daughter with no stipulation, the default amount that you have to give for this dowry is lo yivches la miksus shepoiskin leishas anisha b'Yisrael. You shouldn't give her any less than the amount that's usually given to clothe the poorest woman. Way back in chapter 13, we learned about the obligation for a husband to clothe his wife. The minimum amount of clothes that you give, even to the poorest woman, is 50 zuz per year. 50 zuz, 50 silver coins. So the Rambam says the minimum amount that you give your daughter as she enters a marriage is 50 silver coins. As we've explained. When does that minimum acceptable? If the father was a poor man and he couldn't afford more. But if he was rich, then it's proper that he should give her, according to what he can afford, a little gift to go into the marriage. Halacha beis. Let's say he wasn't the nicest guy in the market. Pira shal habal. The husband, when he meets the prospective son-in-law, he says, you should know, I'm making it very clear. She'ein la klum. I am giving my daughter nothing. V'sheyachnisenu aruma. You're taking her in, figuratively naked. I'm giving her nothing. If that's the explicit stipulation, ein la klum. She gets nothing. V'lo yemer habal. And in this case, the husband cannot say, K'shetove lebeisi achasana. When she comes to my house, I'll give her a wardrobe. The moment he accepts that stipulation, he has to provide for her clothing while she is in her father's house. You accepted to take care of her, it begins from that moment. This is the ideal situation in which the father is, thank God, alive, and he's able to provide for his daughter as she gets married. But what happens if the father dies? If a father dies and he leaves a daughter, so now the sages said that your estate will be responsible to give your daughter this dowry. How much? We have to evaluate. We have to estimate how much would this father have given this daughter for a dowry. And we give it to her. How are we supposed to figure out what he would do? You take into account a couple of things. His friends, his acquaintances, his business dealings, his social standing. And based on all of that, you have to arrive at some kind of figure that would make sense for what this person would give his daughter.
But what happened if the father died and the mother died and there's only one daughter? Is she inherit everything?
Yeah. This is talking about a case where, it's very good what you're saying. The commentaries point out, he's talking about a case where he also left the son. Right. So the son is inheriting it, but the daughter is getting her dowry. How much does she get? That's a very good point. Another great way to evaluate is if he has another daughter who he married off in his lifetime. Well, let's see. How much did he give her? Probably a similar amount would be what he'd give this other daughter. Now, if the court could not figure out exactly how much this person would give, so here we introduce a new concept. We give from his estate a tenth, a tenth for her dowry. So we first try to evaluate it. If we can't figure it out, the automatic payment is a tenth. And how does this tenth work? So we're going to see in a moment, first of all, it's only a tenth from land, from real estate, not from movable property. And also, it goes down proportionally, which means, hiniach bonos rabbi, says the Rambam Malacha Daled, if he leaves multiple daughters, we don't say that, each daughter gets a tenth of the current value. Kol shetovei lihinase, the first girl who comes to get married, noisnin la isur hanachasim, we give her a tenth of the property. So I make a little example here, it's very primitive, but let's just say he left $100, right? So the first daughter comes to get married, she takes 10, because 10 is a tenth of 100. But the girl who gets married after her, isur mashashira rishayna, she only takes a tenth of what remains. Even though he had 100 at the beginning, we don't say it's 10 per each daughter. 10 for the first one. Now there's 90 left. The next girl that comes to get married is getting only 9. It's 1/10. If the third girl comes to get married, isur mashashira shniya, she takes a tenth of what the second one left. So in this case, there'd be 80 left, there were 81 left, so it's 8.1, and so on and so forth. What if they all got married at once? My wife has 2 cousins actually just got married. They just got engaged, two in the same day.
Really?
Yeah, mama's just now. Huh? It could happen. So here you have 3 girls come getting married at once. So now what do? Maybe you should give each one 10, because there's no order here. They're all coming together. But the Rambam says still we do it an interesting way. We imagine as if they're getting married one after another, which means Rishayna neteles isur. The first one takes a tenth. The hashniya isur mashashira rishayna. The second one takes a tenth of what the first one left. The hashlishis isur mashashira shniya, and the third one takes a tenth of what remains. V'chein afilu hein eser, even if it's 10 girls. But let's just use this example over here. So you have 10, 9, and then 8.1. V'chayzreis v'cholkais kol ha'yisurim b'shaveh. And then, because they're getting married together, whatever was taken out of the estate, they divide equally into 3, let's say. The rest of the property goes to the brothers.
The same principle as the other.
Yeah, same principle, but in this case, instead of the first one walking away with 10, second one with 9, third with 8.1, they're all going to be walking away with 9. Because they take them out as if they were getting married in order, and they divide it all equally in 3. Or in 10, or whatever, however many girls there are. And the Rambam lets us know an important point. This tenth, which we provide for a girl for her dowry, is not one of the inherent conditions in a ketubah document. In other words, it isn't treated with the same level of severity as a regular rabbinic enactment. Lefichach, therefore, afilu lefi takanas chachamim ha'achreinim, even according to the later sages' enactment, which we've seen a few times already, that anything which the Torah promises to a woman or to the daughters from landed property should also be collected from movable property. That was the later sages' enactment. Over here, we don't apply that. Even according to the later sages' enactment, that movable property is equated to real estate, eina neiteles ela min hakarka. This tenth, she only takes from real estate. She can also collect the tenth from rent that's due on some of the father's real estate. That's considered to be money associated with real estate. Only if the other boys, they want to give money, they want to keep the real estate, they want to give the girl money, that's fine. But by default, she takes real estate. Now the commentaries debate, do you include the movable property in the total value of the estate to determine the tenth? Interesting question. Is it a tenth of all the real estate that he owns, or it's a tenth of all the property he owns to be collected only from real estate? That's an argument. The Maggid Mishneh, who's the primary commentator, says it's the latter. It's the former. A tenth only of real estate.
And what if the real estate is not sellable? Where does the money come from? How do they get money? If the rent isn't coming in?
She can take the actual real estate.
They can actually divide up the property.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the rent, is that one sum payment, or does she,
If she's collecting from rent,
from rent, right?
she would just take the money. She would just take the cash and then.
For the duration of the marriage?
No, just a tenth. Yeah, it's a one-time sum. Yeah. Tenth, and you go into the marriage. Halacha vav. Habas be'isur zeh kebal chayv shel achin hi. When a girl comes to collect this tenth as her dowry, she's treated like a creditor of the brothers. Unlike, let's say, a widow, when she comes to get her ksuba money, she's not considered to be a creditor. as we've seen, she takes her money from the lowest quality land. A creditor, remember this chart here? Where is it? There it is. 3 types of land. Idit, Beinonit, Ziburit. Best, average, and low quality. Sometimes we define it by the quality of the land itself, other times by the properties on it. So Manhattan would be, the highest level because that's got, prime real estate. Maybe Sherman Oaks is second level, then Africa is like lower level real estate. So typically, a woman only collects from Ziburis, from the lowest quality property. However, because this girl is treated like a creditor, every creditor can take from Beinonis, from average size land. So therefore, lefichach neitelas oisem min ha-beinonis b'lo shvua. She can collect this tenth from the average quality land without even taking an oath. Again, unlike a widow who must take from with an oath. But if the brothers died and she's collecting the tenth from their kids, she can only collect it from the lower quality land with an oath. Because in that case, she is getting paid from the property of orphans. We have a cardinal rule. Anybody who collects payments from orphans' property, can only get paid back from lowest quality land with an oath, as will be explained in the 13th book of the Rambam in the laws of loans. If the brothers went ahead and sold their father's real estate, or they used it as collateral, and the girl still hasn't collected her tenth, her right is so strong that the daughter can expropriate properties from the buyers to cover her dowry. The same way any creditor can go after sold land because it's on lien. So he can go and get it from them, from the buyers, again will be explained in the laws of loans. The underlying reason why a creditor can go after properties is because we assume that there's a kol, there's a rumor. Everybody understands that this guy's under loan. So the buyers put themselves at risk. And so in this case as well, the fact that he has daughters and he's going to be responsible to give them a dowry is well known. And the buyers took their own risk, and therefore the girl can go after them and get the property back. Halacha ches. Misha hisi banes gedolos v'nisharu ktanes. A person has a bunch of daughters. He already married off the older daughters, and he left some younger daughters, died with no sons. So by biblical law, his entire inheritance is going to all the daughters. However, the younger daughters can say, one second, our older sisters, when they got married, took a tenth of the estate. So maybe we should take a tenth first, on account of the fact that we're going to get married, and only then divide the rest of the estate equally. It's not fair. You got your tenth, we should get our tenth. Says the Rambam, no. We do not say that let's put aside a tenth, a dowry, for each of the younger ones, and then divide the estate. No. They all divide equally. Why? The Talmud explains, because a girl is now getting far more than she hoped for. She's anyways getting more. She's getting not only a tenth of her father's estate, she's going to be one of the sole inheritors. So therefore, we don't first give her the tenth and then something else. We just give her portion of the inheritance. Halacha tes misha meis v'hiniach shtei banes ubein. A person dies, leaving 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. The kadma rishayna, the natla isur nechasim. The first girl got married soon after, and she got her tenth of the estate. But the second girl didn't have a chance to collect her tenth ad shemeis haben, before the son died. And now v'naflu kol hanechasim l'shtein. Again, because they're the only heirs, all the property goes to them. Similar principle. The second girl might claim, hey, let me take my tenth before we divide the estate equally. Says the Rambam, no. The second one cannot first take her tenth. They simply divide whatever remains equally. And daughter number 1 who got her tenth, yeah, she lucked out. But that's it. The second girl, you're walking away with 50% of the estate. So don't care about your little tenth. That's not your right.
So the moral is be the first one.
Exactly. Be the first come, first come, first serve. Halacha Yud, Misha Tziva Bishas Misa. What if somebody specifically commanded on his deathbed, Al Tefarnasu B'noisai Min Nechasai, I do not want anybody to provide dowries to my daughters from my estate. Shoymim Lei. Here we can listen to him. Yesterday we saw that when it came to the idea of supporting your daughters after death, before the dowry, giving them food, you can't do that because you cannot undo a clear stipulation in the ketubah. This isn't a stipulation. This is an additional commandment.
But there is it must be a condition to that. So it has to be in a clear mind.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He is. I'm saying if he said it, it's unfortunately okay. She'ein zeh mitna iksu, but this is one of the conditions on the document, so you don't have to fulfill it. Yud Aleph, Misha Meis, V'hiniach almana ubas. A person dies, leaving a widow and a daughter. Kvar beyarnu, so we already explained yesterday, shemezaynes ha'almana kaidmin lemezaynes habas. That in terms of support, funds go first to the widow to cover her food and support, and only then to the daughter. And the principle applies also here. V'chein imises habas. So too when it comes to marriage. The fact that the daughter is getting married, she cannot take a tenth of the estate if the widow, her mother, is still getting support. Even if the daughter dies after she gets married, her husband, who typically inherits all of her rights, doesn't inherit the right to the dowry, because as long as the widow is alive and she needs support, all the money is on lien, presumed to be hers for her food. And so she comes first, totally, even before the tenth of the property for the dowry. Okay, let's remind ourselves of the stages of a girl's development. When she's born, she's called a katana, a young girl, a minor, from 0 till about 12. Usually around 12 is when the first signs of puberty come. At that point, she's called a na'ara, a young girl. Young girl, that stage only lasts 6 months. Again, usually it happens at 12 years old, till 12 and a half, but it could happen any time later in her teens. At 13, she can show first signs of puberty. And the point is, as soon as those first signs come, she becomes a na'ara for 6 months, and after 6 months, she becomes what's called a bogeret, a full major girl. Says the Rambam, let's just keeping that in mind, go into this. Kitana Yisoima, a minor, that means she's under 12, and she's an orphan. Shehisiata imo yacher ladaita, in which case her mother or her brothers could marry her off with her consent. V'nosnu la me'ay chamishim zuz, and they gave her, she's 8 years old, so they give her $100, 50 coins or whatever, and they say, go Zizkait, have a good life. Yechayla hi mishetagdil, once she reaches majority, she is able to go back and say, 1 second guys, I need a tenth of the estate. Lahaitzi miyadam parnasa hara'uyala. She can expropriate from them whatever dowry is befitting her. Either by estimating the mind of her father, or if you don't have that estimation, a tenth of the landed property. Even if the brothers were no longer providing support for her, or even if she didn't protest the little amount of money she was receiving when she got married, doesn't matter. A minor isn't expected to protest for her own rights. So the fact that she didn't protest means nothing. When she gets older, she can go and say, hey guys, I need my money back. I want my tenth. Yud Gimel, Nisis Habas Achar Shegodla, but if the girl only entered the marriage after she reached majority, in either of the two stages, Bein Nara, Bein Baigeres, whether the beginning of puberty or 6 months later, a full major, V'loi Tova Parnasasa, and at the time of the marriage, she did not demand. Her tenth, her dowry, Ibda Parnasasa, she lost claim to it. You got to demand it. V'imochasa be'esh nisueha, so long as she protested, just protested during the marriage, she has the right to expropriate whatever she needs, whatever she deserves, as long as she wants, because she said, hey, I want my stuff, and she declared that protest at the marriage. If she reached majority and was not married, still in her father's house, whether she reached majority after the father's death, or before he left her as a major, if the brothers stopped supporting her, which by right they could, because after majority a woman does not get support from her father's estate, as we explained. So assuming the brothers stopped giving her the support, and at that point she's quiet and doesn't demand her dowry, again, ibda parnasasa, she has lost the right to her dowry, because at that point she's leaving her father's estate, and as you leave, you got to take all your money with you. You don't ask for the money, you don't get it. What if she has nice brothers and they didn't stop feeding her even after she reached majority? Again, by right, they didn't have to, but they chose to. So here it works in her favor. even if she doesn't protest, lo ibda parnasasa, kol zman shehem zanin noisa. She never loses right to her dowry as long as they keep feeding her. Why? And we had this principle already before. When a woman is on the receiving end of any type of favor, she's ashamed to ask for more. So therefore she can say, sheyesh la lita, and she can claim, mipnei shehem zanin noisa, because they're feeding me, afal pi she'enon chayavit. Even though they're not obligated to, but they're still feeding me, they're doing me a favor, and I'm not married yet, that's why I didn't ask for my dowry. Had they stopped, I would have asked. Or had I gotten married, they would have asked. But I didn't, because they were feeding me, and I was embarrassed to ask for more. In that case, it's fine. She doesn't lose her rights. Yudalit. A father doesn't want to just give his daughter outright the money. He figured maybe she's not so financially responsible, maybe she's too young. So he says like this. He says, I want to allocate so and so amount of money. It's going to be for my daughter's dowry, but I need her to buy real estate, make an investment. And he made this declaration either on his deathbed or when he was fully healthy. But he expressed his desire that I want to give my daughter money just for a specific purpose, for investment. Vames. And then he dies, either suddenly or on his deathbed. And the money which he allocated is in the hands of a third party who is supposed to oversee the investments for her. What do we do? The Amra Habas, the girl says, listen, give the money to my husband, and he'll take responsibility. Let him do whatever he wants. Why should you, the third party, hold on to my father's money? I'm married, give it to my husband, let him take the decisions. So the Rambam says, 3 categories. Im haisa gedoyla v'nises. If she was a major and she was already married, not just consecrated, already married, harishus biyada. She has that right. The third party is going to hand off the money to the husband. V'im adayin me'uresasi. If she's still only consecrated, yaseh shalish mashahush biyada. The third party must do whatever was given into his hands. He cannot pass on the money to anybody else. He must oversee the investments because she isn't actually married yet. V'im adayin ketanahi. But if she's a minor, doesn't matter if she's married or not. Afilu nisas, even if she is married, ein shemila, we don't listen to her. Elayasa shalish k'meshetziva ha'ah. The third party must carry out the father's instructions, do the investments, because there's a mitzvah, what's called mitzvah l'kayim divrei hames. It's a mitzvah to fulfill the words of the dead person. So because he gave that money to the third party, we assume it's on his job. He should oversee the investments.
Is the third party getting part of it?
No. He's the father's friend.